you mind if I sit?
Fine.
Okay, you guys are unmuted and ready to go.
I mean, I do.
We're gonna see the word.
You
Yeah.
know, we never. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Oh,
wow.
grazie,
Did I get everyone?
Used to, yes. I think we would.
Ready to go?
Yeah, people would do this.
All right.
They're used to doing it.
And if that's in the way we can move it to the side, right?
That's they will unmute it, so that's the way they're used to doing
Are we live?
it. If you are.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. This is the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 5. My name is Mark Hirschberg, and I serve as the chair of the Landmarks Committee. My vice chair Kevin's over there, keeping attendance. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight, and possibly, depending on how quickly we get through them, a training session afterwards. A reminder to members of the committee that in compliance with the open meetings law, to participate with our videos on Zoom, and I see Neil there already. So many of you are familiar with the format of our meetings. The procedures are as follows. After a brief introductions, each of the applicants will give a full and uninterrupted presentation. Following the presentation, we will move to questions from members of the committee. And then once questions from members of the committee conclude, I'll open up the floor to members of the public, who will then have an opportunity to ask questions, make comments about the application or issue at the appropriate time. And those who wish to speak on Zoom should, using a phone, should press the asterisk and the 9 button to raise their hand, and also the same button to lower their hand, and *6 to unmute. Kevin will also assist you with that. And then once the public comment and question session concludes, we'll move to business session. And during business session, only members of the committee are allowed to discuss the matter. And members of the public or the applicant are only allowed to speak when recognized by me. And then following that discussion, hopefully someone will make a motion. We'll then take it to a vote by the committee, and then that resolution that memorializes that vote or motion will then be presented to the vote of the full board at the next full board meeting. And then once the full board makes the decision, that will become the official position of Community Board 5, and then get forwarded to the LPC and any relevant agencies and elected officials. As a reminder to members of the committee, if you have a conflict of interest, please disclose it before you make a comment and preceding a vote, which would be present but not entitled to vote. And with that, I think we can start. Is the first applicant here in person? Virtually? Okay. So you have the floor.
Hi, Chairman. I think we're first. The Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. My name is Brett Guyard. I'm the head of capital planning at the Met. We are going to try and keep this quick and comprehensive for you all. We have a lot to cover, and we're going to have 3 speakers. Myself, I'll just give a brief overview. Henry Miller from Beyer Blinder Bell, they're our executive architect for both the projects that we're going to present today. And then Michael Whetstone from Beyer Blinder Bell will speak specifically about one of the projects. So Henry, I think if you're able to share your screen, we could put the presentation up, and I'll just move through the first slides quickly.
Okay.
We can see your screen.
Can you see it? Are you? Can
It
you
looks
see?
like it's there, Henry. Community
Yeah,
board members, can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes. Right.
Okay, we can go to the next slide, Henry. Thank you. So our the agenda will be historical information and context, and restoring the 83rd Street entrance, and then replacing the north side chiller plant. So we can stay on this slide for a minute. This is, sorry, Henry. This is really two projects that come together, and we'll explain why, because you can see both of their impact on the exterior of the building in the same view, even though these projects are majority interior projects. We can go to the next slide. Thanks, Henry. So I think, as you all know, the Metropolitan Museum of Art is an individual landmark, the entire exterior. Anytime we make a major change, we come before you, and the interior, an interior landmark, which is the Great Hall. Neither of these projects touch the interior of the Great Hall, but they are an almost entirely interior project, with the exception of two places, and that's what we're here before you today about. And it's both of these projects impact and are essential to our mission in two ways. One is accessibility, and the other is sustainability. So the restoration of the 83rd Street entrance really helps us meet our accessibility goals as an institution by providing a new fully accessible entrance from the plaza level. And we will create a direct connection into the museum and then up into the Great Hall, not in the Great Hall, but adjacent to it with a new elevator. We currently have one accessible entrance on the plaza. We also have one in the parking garage. That's at 81st Street. We have our main entrance at 82nd Street, which is not accessible. And then we would like to add this additional entry that was there originally, as you'll see. This will help us reduce congestion as our visitors enter the building, both on the plaza and within these spaces. The second project that we are presenting to you all is mission critical for us. This is our North Side Chiller Plant. And Mike Whetstone will walk you through all the details of this. But in addition to meeting our significant sustainability goals, it also provides resiliency for us as an institution. And so these two projects together address two major issues for us. So I'll pass it over to Henry Miller. Thanks.
Thanks, Brett. Henry Miller, a principal at Beyer Blinderbell Architects. Privileged to bring this project to you all today. And first, we're going to talk about some historical context at the Met Museum in general. And then we can dive into first the 83rd Street doors and then the North Side Chiller Plant. For those who aren't aware, this is a aerial view of the Met. It's 21 separate buildings built over the years from 1880 to 1990, when really the footprint was filled in. You can see the variety of roofscape here. It extends from 80th Street to 84th Street, and it comprises about 2.1 million gross square feet of interior area and 600,000 square feet of gallery. And it's uniquely situated in Central Park. So we are coming to you today as a community board that borders on the south side of the park. And then quickly on the landmark history of the building, just very quickly, you can see here each of those 21 wings. And the wings shown in blue are those that were present at the time of the original LPC designation in 1967. And then in green was the infill work done by Kevin Roche Architects. Notes here also that the interior was landmarked in the Great Hall, as Brett said, in 1977, and the whole complex was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1984. You'll note here the Fifth Avenue facade, the center wing, which is Wing D, was designed by Richard Morris Hunt, and then the flanking wings by McKim, Eden White to complete the facade along Fifth Avenue. Go to the next page here. You can see that we're proposing to restore the doors in Wing E, which is one of the McKim, Eden White wings on Fifth Avenue. And then directly west of that, the infill project to replace the North Side Chiller Plant. You can see that, and we'll get to that second. So going through the restoration of the 83rd Street entrance, as Brett said, you know, the purpose of this project is to relieve congestion in the public entrance into the museum. So you can see here the existing condition above and then the proposed condition below with the additional accessible 83rd Street entrance, relieving congestion, but also providing an accessible entrance off the plaza. So this is a restoration of the original three doors that were present. And so this is actually McKimby and White drawing from 1906. The red arrows indicate those three doors at the plaza. And that was the condition when the building was constructed. This is a facade elevation from Fifth Avenue, looking at the completion of the McKimby and White work along Fifth Avenue. You can note here, and I've blown it up and highlighted it in red, the presence of those original three doors there. And interesting to note, I think the composition was not symmetrical across the center line of the facade. There were not doors at the south side at 81st Street originally, so those were added later. So we're not restoring a symmetrical condition. You'll also note that there's a gable here above the North 83rd Street doors. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail when Michael Whetstone talks about the Northside Chiller plant. These are some photos showing the 83rd Street doors when they existed. The photo on the left, there was actually a marquee there for a while. And then the photo on the right, you can see two of the doors. One of them is cut off, but you can see that being originally a very functional entrance from the plaza. So worth noting, I think that this was actually a proposal that was made by Roche Dinkerloo in 2001 to restore these entrances, and that was actually approved by Landmarks at the time. So looking a little bit at the historic context of the existing conditions, this is the 83rd Street entrance from the plaza. Looking at the current condition where the two flanking doors have been infilled and there's just the one remaining door, which is used as an occasional entrance for special events at Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium, but typically is not a point for public entry into the museum. Zooming in, this is an interesting photo. You can actually see the ghost here of the original two flanking entrances, which is evidenced by the slightly mismatched limestone. So the facade, the Indiana limestone, was infilled later. You can see the result of that, as well as the base. You can see some of the mismatched stone there. So the proposal really is to pull off that non-original limestone and to restore those two entrances. We did some probes from the interior side. Those entrances are still there from a structural standpoint, so the structural lintel is still there. So this is really, superficial facade work that we're doing here to restore the openings. Maybe just also point out the existing signage. This blade sign is existing, and we're proposing to keep that, minimizing the amount of work we're needing to do at the exterior. We will need to replace this signage above the door, and you'll see some of that as we go through. And for context here, this is now the 81st Street side, just showing that, some of the context that we're looking at as we propose the new doors. You can see there's a blade sign here and a sign over the doors as well. And now at 82nd Street, this is the main entrance, certainly to the museum, up the main stairs into the Great Hall. And zooming into that a little bit. So as a reference point, we looked at these are statuary bronze doors, glass doors with a relatively non-detailed frame and surround and a transom above. So now looking at the proposal, you can see here above the existing condition with the single door at 83rd Street and the proposed elevation here below with the three doors restored. We have dashed in what will be the Northside Chiller plant cooling tower replacement, which Michael Whetstone will talk about, but just to see how those two are related from this Fifth Avenue elevation, as Brett mentioned. Zooming in here, a little bit more detail, you can see the three proposed doors. So from a architectural and restoration scope standpoint, we're going to be very careful to remove that non-original stone, to find stone that matches the existing Indiana limestone and the base, which is actually a Deer Isle granite, and we'll demolish the existing door at the center. So this is the elevation of the proposed. You can see the signage band at the transom, the bronze doors with the glass panels, and pulls, all of which will be accessible. We need to have automated doors for accessibility. We'll get into a little bit about how we dealt with that. And you can see in plan, we're just really inserting these new doors into those existing openings. A blow up in section on the right, you can see the transom, which is the signage band. All of this will be insulated and thermally broken from a energy standpoint. And we're proposing to wrap the entrance, the jambs and the soffit in a bronze enclosure, as you see here in section. So that allows us to recess the light fixture, but also you can see here in a plan detail, the ADA buttons. So that allows us to deal with some of these, modern day requirements without needing to dig into the existing stone at all. So we're trying to be very careful about not disrupting that historic fabric. And these are just some axon diagrams to make it clear as far as how we're treating the return of the stone and holding back the proposed bronze jambs to honor that, and also reference the 82nd Street doors from a materiality standpoint. So that's what this shows. Here's the 82nd Street doors. You can see that here in the middle axon, and then on the right, really pulling from that as a reference for 83rd Street. A couple renderings showing that these are obviously not photorealistic. The glass, important to note, would be transparent, and the idea there being certainly that we want to reinforce the visual connection from the interior to the exterior, both from a visitorship standpoint, but also a security standpoint. You can see that we're keeping that existing signage pylon here, as well as the signage above the doors. Kind of an oblique view showing better the way we're dealing with the relationship to the historic fabric. A few notes on the signage. So this is the 1'11" transom above the door. We'd have 4-inch letters, so that the transom is an oxidized or a statuary bronze. The letters would be a light bronze, and we have a soffit light above that, which will allow those to be illuminated very discreetly. So that is the 83rd Street entrance restoration. Now I'll hand it over to Michael Whetstone, my colleague from Biogram Develop, to talk about it.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, committee members. So this is part 2 of the presentation, and we're going to talk about what is really a resiliency and sustainability mechanical infrastructure project. So first, where is the project located? It's the area highlighted in pink. It's wings W and X, as they are called. They were built in the 1950s and 1960s. They're really infill wings, which are interior to the building behind the McKinney and White buildings. Wing X contains the 1954 Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium at the Met. And then at the top, you can see a long north to south section of the entire building showing where the project is. There's the chiller plant located in the lower levels. There's some program space I'm going to talk about, and then there are replacement cooling towers on top of the auditorium. I'm just going to show you a blow up of that area of section to show you what's going on. Here's the section. You can see the auditorium over here on the left is the grand stair that's part of the Great Hall. So the chiller plant, which serves 60% of the building, is very old. It's about 40 years old. The equipment is obsolete, and it's also currently located in this lowest basement area, which in recent years, because of climate change, with unprecedented torrential rainfalls in Central Park and the state of the Central Park underground drainage system, this area now occasionally floods, putting critical infrastructure at risk. And so this equipment needs to be replaced. The thought was to build it actually 1 floor higher, out of the flood zone, all of the mechanical and electrical equipment. And then to this will displace what are now the museum's exhibition preparation workshops, where they build pedestals and exhibit cases and things like that. That function will move up to the 3rd floor, for which we will infill a couple of small light wells to make a continuous skylit space for them. And then the last component is these replacement cooling towers up on the roof. Now, the chiller plant here, the north side chiller plant, actually serves 60% of the building's 2.1 million square feet. And what it does is it makes chilled water, which is then sent by pipes to all the individual HVAC systems in each wing, where it is part of the critical museum infrastructure. Museums have to keep a constant year-round temperature of 70 degrees with 50% relative humidity. That's an international standard for art conservation, and it's kind of a very heavy-duty lift for a mechanical system. And so all the design and the decisions that I'm going to show you are really based entirely on being able to meet those art conservation requirements. Working with our mechanical engineers, Kohler Ronan, when we replaced this extremely outdated, obsolete equipment, we found with a model that we were able to improve the electrical performance of the north side chiller plant by using 54% less electricity per year compared to what it uses right now. So this is an important goal of the Met to save energy and update infrastructure. Now, just getting into the architecture. Here's an aerial view of the Met and the front elevation. You can see on the left, there is the south side cooling towers. They were installed in 2012 by the commission along with a screen wall. And on the right side, you can see the north side chiller plant where we're working. In red are the obsolete cooling towers that we are planning to replace. And the new configuration, we're proposing to build a screen wall. It's an aluminum screen wall. I'll show you details of it. Very similar to what is on the south side. So it becomes a situation where north and south are somewhat similar. The cooling towers and screen wall that we're proposing are actually slightly lower, if you look at the red line, than what's on the south side. But the geometry is a little bit different. You can see the roof line is lower and there's this pediment. So the visibility issues are a little bit different than what you see on the south side. Here's an axonometric of that corner. In red, you can see the existing cooling towers on top of the auditorium, and to the right of it. They are in different levels. For mechanical engineers, it's very difficult to have cooling towers on two different levels. They want to be on the same level so that the water pressure by the time you get down to the ground floor or chiller plant is all the same. So our proposal is to build a new array of cooling towers all on one level on the roof of the auditorium. And then again, you can see at the back of the McKimmon white pedimented roof to put that aluminum louvered screen wall, which is very similar to the one on the south side. To show you some existing conditions, this is the roof of the auditorium and the current set of cooling towers. And on the right, you can see that McKimmon white pedimented roof, and beyond that to Fifth Avenue. And here are just some details of that interesting asymmetrical pediment, which rises above the McKimmon white facade. This is a roof plan showing the cooling towers in relationship behind the McKimmon white gable. And then in orange, you can see, by the way, those two low infill areas where we're proposing to expand the museum's workshops. This is a close-up view of the cooling towers on the right, these new infill roofs with small skylights for the workshop. Those are photographs of the two infill areas on the left. They are both in non-historical areas of the Met and be completely invisible from the street. You can see in the section view, the auditorium and the cooling towers, the yellow areas with the little orange line on top, those are the two infill areas where we're proposing. But we can talk a little bit about the cooling towers themselves. We are proposing to build steel plate girders, shown in orange, that span across the auditorium from side to side. It's about a 90-foot span. And then above is a platform with cooling towers, and then there are all kinds of networks of piping which have to be below the cooling towers, and they are all shown here. And the whole height sandwich is really based on engineering criteria. This is an axonometric showing the screen wall really just floating above, exactly 1 foot above the back wall of the McKimmon white pedimented area. And as the screen wall, as I said, the left photographs on top are of the existing screen wall built in 2012 on the south side of the museum. So we're proposing to match this detail exactly with our new screen wall. Now, This is details of the screen wall, showing a section of the screen wall is entirely supported on the steel dunnage and doesn't touch the historic structure at all. But I think the next thing to talk about is visibility, which is really the reason we're before you and going to landmarks. So the two sets of cooling towers are actually set back more than 100 feet from Fifth Avenue and from the facade of the building. And they are, in fact, not visible at all from Fifth Avenue, and they're not visible at all from the plaza. But because of the coincidental alignment with these two side streets, when you go down 81st Street on the south side or 83rd Street on the north side, you begin to get some partial visibility of the very top of the screen wall when you get to certain distance down these blocks. So I'm going to show you some views of that. This is a section actually on 81st Street on the south side. You can see the person standing across Fifth Avenue. His red light sight line does not intersect the screen wall, but once you get a certain distance point to the far right, down 81st Street, then the very top comes into view. I'm going to show you that in photographs from Fifth Avenue. Cannot see the screen wall. When you get down a certain amount, you can start to see the screen wall peeking above the roof. This is a blow up of that same photograph, so you can see the top few feet of that louvered screen wall peeking above the roof on 81st Street. And we have a similar condition with the new cooling towers on 83rd Street. So here's that section. You can see the auditorium, the cooling towers on top. The roof line is a little bit different, but you can see the point at which you'll be able to just see the top of the screen wall going back a little bit. So showing some photographs. This map on the left shows the different views that I'm going to show you. So view 1 at the top here at the corner of Fifth Avenue, no visibility at all. And when you get about 60 feet down the street to view number 2, then the top would just come in. It's very small and hard to see in the photograph, and the trees are in the way. So I've actually shown with a red line, because you can't, this is a rendering, but you can't really see it very well because of the trees. That's where the top horizontal line of the screen wall just comes into view next to the pediment, similar to the other side of the building. I want to go to the next view, view 3. It's slightly higher, but you can still see that it is parallel to the roof next to the pediment, and still, we think, just minimally partially visible. When we go to V4, which is halfway down the block, at this point, you can really barely see it at all through the trees, but there it would be coming up a little bit on the pediment. And then view 5 is actually at the corner of Madison and 83rd Street. You really can't see anything at all. And if you go all the way down to Park Avenue and 83rd Street, certainly can't see anything at all there. So we think that this is a very minor partial visibility of the top few feet of the screen wall at a certain stretch of 83rd Street. Landmarks asked us to build a scaffold mock-up so they can prove that these renderings were correct. Here's our scaffold that we built to the exact height on the roof. And then same thing, here's the point in this blown up photograph where you can just see it coming up and where it's a few feet higher. These are blown up photographs. The photographs, you can see the red line there. I think it's a very minor piece sticking up there. We're also asked to look at the visibility, if any, from the north. So if you go all the way up the hill to the edge of the reservoir, you might be able to just catch the top of the cooling towers, but they're still lower than the building, which is beyond it. And looking at the photographs, I think it's really a imperceptible view, if anything, from the north. Now, 2 questions you might have, which I want to answer, is why are the cooling towers located exactly where I've shown them, which is pressed up against the McKinney & White building? Why not farther back? The reason for that is a structural reason. Here's the auditorium plan. Our first idea was, of course, to rotate the cooling towers 90 degrees and have them all line up behind the McKinney & White pediment. There were structural reasons why we couldn't do that. And we had shown you this plan of the auditorium by McKinney & White. 1907, it had a massive bearing wall and a semicircle. When the auditorium was enlarged in the 1950s by Voorhees, Walker, Foley, and Smith, they broke through that hemicycle and extended the auditorium to the west. So structurally, they removed this part of the masonry wall. In blue, you can see the steel columns and beams that hold up the roof. So the steel columns and beams cannot hold up the cooling towers at all, but the massive McKinney & White bearing walls can. So both the existing cooling towers and our proposal for now are to span across between the two masonry walls to hold up the cooling towers. That's the structural reason why we are placing them where we are. Your second question might be, why are the cooling towers taller than the original ones? The existing towers you see here are kind of a horizontal configuration. They're called a forced draft cooling tower. And the ones we are proposing are more efficient, called an induced draft cooling tower. They take advantage of gravity and waterfalls and height on the inside. The taller cooling towers use 1/2 of the electricity than the lower ones, which are much less efficient. And moreover, our engineers tell us that the New York City Energy Conservation Code no longer allows these low cooling towers, or they don't allow cooling towers that are less efficient than the induced draft tall type. So just in terms of energy savings and code practice, we are proposing these taller cooling towers rather than the kind of energy hog lower ones. That's a detail about cooling tower. I'm coming almost to the end. My last little bit here is about the historic precedents. This area of the Met that we're talking about has always been the place where the central mechanical infrastructure has been located, which has always been quite massive for such a big building. So originally in 1911, McKimmon & White built a huge coal-fired boiler house right on the site of Wing W. This is from by the way, you can see Henry's 3 sets of doors right there in 1907. But you can see the McKimmon & White chimney actually sticking up above the roof. This is the McKimmon & White section showing that, an aerial view. You can see the chimney as well. So that was what was there from 1911 until the 1960s, when the building got connected to Con Ed City Steam. At that point, air conditioning came into play. So Wing W had this first 2 set of cooling towers. You can see them on top in the 1960s. In the 70s, they were right next to the McKimmon & White gabled roof. You can see it circled in red. And then in the 1980s, there were actually 2 massive cooling towers on top of the auditorium with a screen wall. And these were actually much, much, much higher than what we are proposing right now. So this is just a historical context to say that the history of having some of this massive mechanical infrastructure slightly visible, but set back more than 100 feet is really a kind of a part and parcel of the history of the Met. So thank you for listening to my long presentation, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. That was really comprehensive. Learned a lot. I'll open it up to members of the committee. Any questions? First for the applicant, Carla.
First of all, just in the interest of transparency, I worked at Bayer Bluebell like a million years ago, and my whole and I were colleagues. So, but I have no conflict of interest. So, but I just wanted to ask a question about the doors. So, given that there's going to be transparent glass, when you look through those doors, what are you seeing? What is behind those doors, and what is the entrance that's going to be there? I often go in on the 81st Street entrance. Is it going to be similar? Is the Met going to continue to use both entrances? I'm just curious.
So yes, both entrances, 81st and 83rd Street, will be utilized. And the Met does have very specific plans about how they want to utilize both entrances. I think having both is actually an opportunity to help manage visitorship and flows and try to reduce queuing on the plaza.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Brett, if you want to say anything more about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, so we're still looking at our kind of 3 entrance strategy and who we will hope to direct to each entrance, although the public will be able to use all of them. We are in schematic design right now, and there will be a public realm through those doors, meaning similarly to how you walk into Uris, although that's a ramp down at 81st, you'll be able to walk straight in to a public space where there'll be security, and you'll go through your kind of typical entry sequence and be able to hang a left and make your way to an elevator up the Great Hall. So it'll be designed as a public realm that could only be at the Met. We don't actually know finishes, materials, all that detail yet. And then beyond that, you'll be able to access amenities like retail, restaurants, restrooms, kind of in the same way that we have amenities on the 81st Street side for education.
Okay, thank you.
Great presentation at the Met often, and there's no conflict, but my sister used to work at the Met. You may even know her, but I won't say her name. Anyway, thrilled that the funky limestone is going away. And that you're using, existing structure to put those doors in, great benefits. So about that, so when you showed it, since I'm way on back here, the symmetry then is realigned on both sides of the facade or not? Is there like 3 doors and then how is that working? That's my first question. And then the second is about the signage. Above the doors, it says, I think it said, what did it say? Sign here. Sign here. So the sign's gonna go there, but what does that sign say? And does that, from a symmetry standpoint, is that the same on the opposite side? If you were looking at Fifth Avenue, this beautiful building, and just interested in the aesthetics and symmetry.
Yeah, so there actually was not originally symmetry across the facade. So 81st Street originally had no door and 83rd Street had 3 doors. I think part of the reason for that is actually the grade along the plaza. The 83rd Street naturally lines up with the ground floor inside the museum, whereas 81st Street doesn't. So, you know, when the Met added 81st Street, they did have to ramp down. And then I think based on how they wanted to use the auditorium, you know, sometime in the 60s, I think they infilled, or the 50s, they infilled those 2 flanking doors at 83rd Street. So really what we're doing is we're just proposing to restore what was there at 83rd Street, the 3 doors. We're leaving the existing single door at 81st Street and you know, concentrating on this wing and restoring it to its original state.
So there's 3 doors on one side and then the one on the far side.
That's correct.
Does one door also have a sign above it that says sign or whatever? What is sign here going to say?
Well, so there's signage at both doors, and I think the overall signage plan for the Met is something that they're actively studying, and they want to look at that holistically. And because now they're adding a new entrance for the public at 83rd Street, I think it's an important question about how do they put signage up for the doors and manage the visitor flow, as we mentioned. I think that is still in process, and so what we've done here is really define from an architectural standpoint what we want that signage to be and how it can be integrated into the historic fabric in a way that's sensitive. So by making it bronze, by relating it to the transom, we can be assured of that. And then by keeping the existing blade sign adjacent to the door, that's also an opportunity to put more informational signage in, you know, related to what's happening beyond. So,
And Henry, I can just jump in for a minute on kind of like, what is the sign gonna say? So, as I'm sure you know from your sister, there's many stakeholders here. So the sign will signal something about entering the Met, right? This is an entrance to the Met. And in the same way the sign at 81st Street does, in the same way the signage at the main entrance does. And then we have the blade sign that will be able to say what you can access, that it's accessible, what to do in the same way that it kind of does on the 81st Street side. We have heard from landmarks and community that we need to think holistically about signage, and we are working through that process now. And we will come back to you all once we have a proposal that will be a public hearing. And our hope is to look at the exterior holistically and at the interior of the Great Hall holistically, because I don't know if you remember when we came to you for the digital displays. This was now 2 years ago, I think. We talked about digital displays in the Great Hall. And one of the comments during the public hearing at Landmarks was, that there's a cacophony of signage in the Great Hall right now. And that's correct, because we haven't looked at it holistically in that way. So our plan is to do that, both on the inside and the outside, and come back later on in this process with a comprehensive approach. That being said, if that either doesn't happen or doesn't get approved, or there's lots of comments, which there probably will be, we can live with the signage that we're proposing as part of this presentation and get these doors open and get the public in this way. So that's been our approach. And we talked to Landmarks about that as well, that we would have some signage over the doors in a similar fashion to what we have at 81st Street, and be able to open our doors and move forward with allowing entry into the building here. even if we don't get through this kind of comprehensive plan, although our hope is to do that in the future.
Right. Well, thank you, and thanks for clarifying. I think the holistic approach is a great thing to hear, and you never want one side of the building, of this beautiful building, to pull focus and look modernized or incongruent with the overall facade, but you know that more than I. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
Any other questions from members?
Partially, I thought that I had heard that these doors are going into where the Costume Institute is now. And the Costume Institute was gonna be moving upstairs and bookstore space being moved downstairs. So is that true? Is that still valid? And so will we be entering into bookstore space?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So this is part of a larger internal rearrangement in which we're working on. So the Costume Institute isn't here right now. What's here right now is the staff cafeteria. So if you've actually used these doors to enter Grace Rainey Rogers, it's a slightly weird experience where they set up security and you kind of go through back of house space to get up to Grace Rainey Rogers. Our primary function is a museum, and so anything to that is an accessory use. So you would never actually walk through an exterior door and into a store or into a restaurant. You will walk through an exterior door into the Met. You have to go through security, all the things that are part of entering the Met, and of course a generous space because of the volume of people that we have moving through the Met at all. Sometimes upwards of 30,000 people a day at our busy time. So we are looking at bringing retail and food service where our staff cafeteria is, but that would be well beyond this space. So you would not walk into that space. And we're studying that right now.
Looking at the rendering you have there, aside from what looks like just a single recessed light in each portico, is there any other lighting that we can expect in these three doorways?
There isn't, and part of the reason for that is that the plaza has lighting already integrated into the pavers that illuminates the facade in a general way and the surrounding of the plaza as well. So all we really need to do with this proposal is light that recessed portal. So we've been working with the lighting designer to make sure that that's sufficient. Both from a architectural standpoint, but also from an accessibility and a code standpoint.
And I see we have a question from David virtually. Might be for the urgent.
He's whispering. Are you whispering? I can't hear you.
Oh, I see we might have a question from David Shapiro virtually.
Yeah, hi. So I think you guys presented to CB8 last night. Is that correct? Yeah. So I'm a little bit confused as to why we're on the docket here. If CB8 has already given the public a chance to opine on this, I don't understand why we're doing this. It takes resources away from the Met. It takes opportunities for us to go and not look at other projects. So I'm a little bit confused about that, but I do appreciate your presentation. And so in the fact that CB8 has, I believe, approved it, correct? Yeah. I would move to listen to the public if there's anybody that's has any questions, and then we should move to a vote as soon as possible. Thank you.
Sure. So I can actually, I can give that I can answer as well, but it's because it touches Central Park, and so as a result, all the community boards in the area can weigh in.
Yeah, but is there
Community boards.
either
That are
Specific part.
touch the park.
And that's part of the jurisdiction. Yeah.
it just seems like a use of resources that's not efficient.
I don't think that's just that's how it's set up.
Wasting more time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try, in the interest of not wasting time, do you have, and I can happily look at this offline, just a general overview of like the project timeline that you can walk us through briefly, or something that can be shared if you haven't already?
I think we could just verbally say it, Henry, if you want to quickly just kind of give the major milestones.
Yeah, so we're in design right now. As Brett mentioned, we're in schematic design on the interior. We're hoping to go into construction in the middle of 2025 on this project. And then, the construction schedule really would extend out towards the end of 2026.
And just to be, why we're doing this so early is because of an incredibly long lead time on cooling towers, right? So we can't we can't put the order in for the cooling towers with comfort without going through this process first, even though it's kind of far away.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Comment?
oh, before that, I just want to see if there's any questions from members.
Right, yes, could you just briefly, walk through, how the quality of life of people who are gonna be using, who need ADA, how their quality of life is gonna be improved, their experience is gonna be improved at the Met?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's challenging now. We do our best, right, with our existing building, but one thing that we don't offer our visitors right now is a direct connection from the plaza through the inside into the Great Hall, which is an incredibly magical space and where you buy tickets and kind of many people begin their journey. If you enter at 81st Street, you have to take an elevator up and then you're in gallery space immediately, which is beautiful, obviously, to be in gallery space, but disoriented. So you don't get the same experience of your kind of first entry point being the Great Hall. So that's what these doors will allow for, which we're very excited about. They'll also allow for access. Once you're in the space, you'll be able to go to the store. You'll be able to get something to eat, use the restroom in a convenient way, all kind of, off this public realm through these doors. So those are the two main ways. It will also relieve congestion at our only accessible entrance off the plaza, which is the 81st Street, and also our education entry. And we just opened our 81st Street studio last year, which has been incredibly popular, which we're happy about, but has further led to congestion at that entry point.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions from members of the public? Zoom, that's all good, okay. So now I'll move to business session. As a reminder, this is only for members of the committee to speak. So, Barbara, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's a really, it was a good presentation, very convincing in terms of the need, and the care that they've taken to be sensitive to the building and also minimize the impact, the visual impact of the cooling towers. I have no hesitations with this application, and I certainly would move to approve it.
Okay, Mike,
Yeah, nobody mentioned the cooling towers.
Yeah.
And the invasive, how much it can be seen is minimal. And, this is a great place. I go there all the time. I love it. And anything that alleviates the congestion up those stairs and in those lines before you get to, even if you are a member, you still have to go through all of that stuff. It's terrific. Gotta hand it to these guys making 3 or 4 presentations to all the different community boards. You did great on that stuff. Thank you for being for persevering. Anything that alleviates the crowds at the entrance. I think New Yorkers are going to end up taking those two and let the tourists continue up the stairs where they are used to going every year. So you'll, at least the savvy people will know to get through, and I presume it'll be a little easier, or it won't be, even if you got to go through some galleries before you get to the main hall, it'll be fine. And I don't see any problem with any of the items that you guys are proposing, and I'm certainly going to vote for approval.
I was just gonna say I concur and thank you for coming for Landmarks. Also environmentally, I hope that the Met will make sure to let the world know what great stewards you are, not only of the artwork that you hold, but also of our climate issues. And that's just so important. So kudos on that.
Tony?
With respect to the landmark itself, I mean, what they're actually doing, they're removing non-original material. They're restoring openings to where there were openings in the past. I think that's really what we're focusing on here when looking at the landmark and how it's being treated. As the one gentleman put it, it's superficial facade work. And the fact that it's non-original material, I think is super important. And even, reviewing the application earlier and then seeing it here, the floating screen above the pediment, how it doesn't touch it at all, how it's not affixed to it at all. I mean, that's really impressive. I mean, they're really going out of their way to make sure that they're not intervening on anything that is original, something that could, be damaged that is original. They've always been great stewards. Their projects are always fantastic, super detailed, everything. I think it's a great application.
Okay. So it sounds like everyone's in favor of the application. Do we have a motion to approve that?
Second.
No, you have to make, yes,
Okay. Motion to approve and then,
second.
okay, take it to a vote.
Okay. Frizz, I'm a yes. Harris?
Yeah.
Hirschberg?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
K-Beck?
Yes.
I'm gonna put your name.
If you want to give it a shot, go for it.
Vijatovic?
Yeah, to it.
Vijatovic, okay,
I mean, yes.
yes. Miller? Neil?
Yeah.
David Shapiro? Spandorf?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Litsky?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. And as a reminder, I think our board meeting is on November 14th at 6 p.m., the full board meeting, where the full board will vote on the resolution approving the application. So thank you very
14th.
much. I think so. Is that right?
14th.
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, I think, so we have two other applications. It's 325 Park Avenue. Do I hear?
Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
should we start, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay.
Just for everyone, this is a application for east facade restoration and mechanical upgrade project for St. Bartholomew's Church. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Community Board and Mr. Chairman. Over the years, we've been in front of the Community Board on various items, but for the last few years, it's been quiet because most of the work, which has been continuing, has been restorative. We've been working on a lot of pieces, but why don't we proceed and we'll try to be efficient with your time. And the previous proposal actually has some significance for what we're doing. So you'll see some repeat. Let's go. The location and site history, I think most of you are familiar. We'll go through that. The proposed mechanical HVAC installation and a reconfigured egress there. And then the viewpoints, and interestingly, nothing is visible from the street, but once you go up onto an adjacent privately owned public space plaza, you can get a glimpse of the top of it, and we're going to go through that. Next, the location and site history. This is St. Bartholomew. It's adjacent to the Waldorf Astoria. The big plaza in front of it has been restored over the years, and we're going to take a look at that. It's on between 51st and 50th Street, and it's as much as it's a religious structure, it's assumed sort of a civic presence in the area, and is heavily used plaza in the front steps, and it's been a pleasure. We've been associated with it for about 15 years. Next, this is the classic view of the front of the building that everyone's familiar with. The building was built in 1830. The main church, the portals were moved from the original church, which was designed by Stanford White, and those were brought in and affixed to the front. And the community house to the right side there was added just almost before construction was ended. They started raising the money and did that in about 1930. It's been a historic landmark, National Historic Landmark since 2016, and it's been on the National Register of Historic Places. It was one of the very early landmarks in 1967. Next. Historic photographs. That the one on the far left, the tax photos, shows the community house to the right and the main church, and then some vignettes of the closer up areas, which have not changed really in the time period of since it was built, except for the work on a garden to the left of the it's in that, if you can just go to the.
It's right here.
Yeah, no, on the other side of the church, there was a garden added in the 60s. Next. This will just recap, the work has been extensive. The vestry and the building committee has been extremely dedicated to the restoration with landmarks to keep it in a first-class condition on the exterior. And you can see that we've done, the community house was restored, the exterior. That interestingly was built with steel and brick, where the main church was entirely masonry. The roofs have been carefully monitored and worked on, with the whole adage of we can't do anything on the inside until the outside is totally secure. The big enchilada, which was in front of the landmarks and yourselves, was the dome restoration and preservation, which was an award-winning project, and that was in front of the commission and went through that, and that worked out very well, and that's been illuminated and is the church is very proud of that. We've just finished the north facade restoration, and we're down to the back of the church, which is the area that's been most neglected, and that's what we're working on the restoration. But that is approvable at staff level, but committee members were here to go over the mechanical issue that we're going to discuss next, which is the proposed installation and reconfigured egress stair. This is the basement plan. There's an enormous basement, and the chillers were put in the basement, which was not an ideal situation. The building is very porous because the floor, the original heating and cooling was meant to come up through the floor in vents, and it's created a lot of humidity and damage to the building. Our intent is to get this equipment out of there and put it above ground, very similar to what you were hearing at the previous hearing, the previous item. Next. So we explored all the areas around the building that we could, because of all the pitch grooves and high visibility and exquisite landmark credentials of the building. There were very few places that could be considered, but the rear of the church against the existing adjacent buildings had some deep wells, and on an existing third floor roof plan, we found a place to put the HVAC unit, which could be totally concealed, except for the required acoustical enclosure, because of New York City has very tough. I can remember as a younger architect, you would have just put this there and then wind up fighting with the adjacent building because the acoustic enclosures weren't that high state of the art. The enclosure is going to be what is visible, and we'll talk about that, slightly visible. And what, just for reference as we go through this, the dark yellow is the HVAC unit, the lighter yellow is the acoustic enclosure that's around it. Now, I know this is a very confusing drawing, but this is the rear of the building going towards the the east side of it. Now that's a better image. And the wells are the lower portions of it. It was not treated with any of the degree of architectural finesse that the rest of the facades were, but that's no excuse for, we're being very careful about the visibility. The reference to the exit stair, let me just really clarify that. That's an existing network of stairs that get the different public assemblies in the building and the community house, which has a small school program that egresses out those buildings and into the choir building and out onto 52nd Street. 51st Street, I'm sorry. These views are the down from a lower portion in the second floor roof going up towards the mock-up that Landmarks requested. And this certainly isn't visible. You're inside the pit right now, and the stairs, none of this is visible from the street. But we just wanted to show sort of where we are in the building. Next. And just this we'll go back to at the end too. Our intent, we're going to have a similar acoustic enclosure to what you see on the right without that paneling on the outside. And our intent, having been through this often, is to have it factory painted with an approved Landmark color that's going to closely match the brick. And we're going to go through you'll see in a moment, actually treating it with the black speckle to get the mixture of visibility. And here is an example of that. This again is a mock-up, but we will have that's the existing mock-up that Landmarks asked for visibility. And on the right, we're just showing a rendering of what we would see as the enclosure, and we would have again very carefully matched factory finished paint on the outside finish. Next. I think this is what you're used to, the classic street and visibility studies that Landmarks required from the beginning. Let's just dwell on this for a moment to orient the members of the board here. You see Park Avenue, you can see St. Bart's, the outdoor terrace that has the temporary tent now, and then the community house. And interestingly, I'll just say from a design point of view, I think Bertram Goodhue had passed away as they were starting the community house. And I think a lot of the work on solving this rear portion, just got left to okay, we'll diminish the sizing, which was fortunate. So they lowered a lot of the pieces of the building, and it was sort of back of house. It wasn't the primary functions of the building. So you can see the apse there, and you can see the interior courtyard, the third floor roof that's topical for our unit, and then the second floor roof, which is would have been much more visible to the street. Next. This is just sort of an overall roadmap of what we're going to be showing you on the visibility. If you look, again, the north is to the top of the page, and that's the adjacent building with the plaza that we're referring to. Now, the street, that ABC that you see in the enlargement to the right, we're going to go through those, but those are street views that are non-visible. But when you go up approximately 10 foot, not approximately, it's 10 foot 7 inches above the sidewalk, you can get some very minimus tops of the acoustic enclosure, and we'll show those in a moment. Next. This is just to orient you, this privately owned public space, the so-called POPs Plaza. That the photo looking northeast down 51st Street, the church is on the right. On the next one to the right is looking east. And again, the church is on the right. Looking west towards Park Avenue, church is on the left in that one. And you can see it's not a heavily traveled thing because it's meant mainly to get in the building and has a heavy lunchtime crowd. It's a beautiful sunlit space in the daytime. And then you can see the other two. We just want to give you a full feel for it in case you haven't been familiar with it. So again, we're 10'7" above the sidewalk, but under the rules of the Landmarks Commission, that is part of the public thoroughfare, so to speak.
Correct.
Next. Okay, I'm going to ask Andrew Kim, who my associate here, to just go through these different viewpoints, and he'll cover it since he was out taking the photographs and knows it well.
So what I'm showing in 3 different colors, the red is from the sidewalk, the blue is from the edge of the plaza, and then the green is from the back of the plaza. So you'll see subsequent sheets coming up that show each individual viewpoint. This is from the sidewalk. We took 3 vantage points on the sidewalk, and we labeled them A, B, and C. They're all set 3 foot apart. This is the first vantage point, A, and it's right in line with the apse. So you don't see the unit or enclosure at all, as according to these photos. It's blocked by the apse, and then you have this chimney that's also blocking it.
And frankly, there's no significant architecture back there to begin with that would be visible.
Right, and then vantage point B is 3 foot offset from A. Here again, you don't see the enclosure at all. Currently now they have the scaffolding up, but you can still see through it, and none of the enclosure is visible. And this is a zoomed up view of it.
And the mock-up in orange is there right now, so it's not visible.
Viewpoint C is 3 foot apart from B. And again, not visible. We have the pediment of the choir that's blocking your view. So there's no view of the enclosure at all.
Good. Move on.
Going up to the plaza, we have 3 vantage points up here, 15 feet apart. D is aligned with the apse. Again, no visibility of the enclosure. But when you get to E, you see a slight peeking through of the enclosure. And this is the mock-up photos that you're seeing. The orange is the netting. This is the non-zoomed in view. And this is the zoomed in view of it. Going to the F, you see.
And again, that would be a flat surface, no mechanical equipment. It would just be the painted enclosure.
So view F is again 15 feet away from E. You see a slight bit of it also. Again, it's blocked by the pediment partially. Below is the zoomed in view of it. And then we go back to the back of the plaza where Landmark requested these images and photos of the mock-up. And you do see from the plaza, this is way back in the plaza, 40 feet away from the edge of the plaza wall. You begin to see a little bit through the scaffolding that's currently there.
So we're talking to over 200 feet, over 300 feet
from
the equipment itself.
And then midpoint of the plaza, a little closer, you see again the enclosure in orange. And that's the end of our presentation.
And you just go back, after seeing all those orange pictures, I just wanted to remind you that having sat through many Landmark Commission hearings, my personal interest is to see the enclosure really treated permanently in a finish that is not just a painted on, tan color for the brick, but a carefully matched piece. And thank you for listening, and we'll answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have any questions from members of the committee?
No question. You guys mentioned Bernard Goodyear. Can you tell us what part he had in the building of the St. Bart's?
Good you.
Bertrand Goodhue.
Did he put up the money for it?
I'm good, you.
An architect.
Oh, he's an architect? It's not,
Yeah,
it's not the tire guy?
No.
Never mind. Never mind.
Suzanne?
So, normally in the past, long ago, great presentation, beautiful property, we love it, and, thank you so much for your time. Normally in the past, presentations were made in person, and we had the opportunity to see materials that might come in, like a fence, or a paint color, or a marble, or a limestone. And so, did you all, I know you're not here today, of course, but we appreciate it looks like a wonderful match, and I know you've done so much due diligence in order to make sure of that, and we appreciate that so much. But, did you have to present this to anybody else in terms of give them an actual sample? I'm just curious.
Not the full sample. I can tell you from extensive experience with landmarks, they will hopefully be motivated to this and say the final they would like to see a finished sample on the building with and the staff will approve the final. But we certainly are not hiding that. Our intention is to get the closest match possible. And we've actually talked to the manufacturer of the enclosure and sort of lined up all the people who would do it. And in particular, the woman who's with, oh God, I just dropped, who's working with us on the Metropolitan Club facade. We're doing some paint matching where some former irreparable marble was damaged, and she's doing a little paint touch up. So
No, I'm sure it's just I just wanted to ask if you were going to go through that process. We appreciate that, and of course.
Yes.
We'd gladly share it.
Yeah, new paint always looks a little different than old paint on an old building.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Tony?
Just quickly, you mentioned the facade restoration is at staff level. Is that because it only involves some very basic things like brick restoration? Is there anything involving changes to windows or anything? That facade?
That's a great question. The major change was the tile on the roof. There was a lot of marble that in previous the previous boards had reviewed it, and the Landmarks Commission, and it was replaced at great expense and great effort to be more permanent for the next century, hopefully 2 centuries. And there was a material change, but to match the existing, but using terracotta. And that was the only change in material. Everything else in the building is existing brick and very traditional restorative. That's the magic word with the LPC, restorative work. So there's nothing that's new or, and we were cautioned in doing this presentation in preparation for the full commission. She said, the staff who we work with pretty closely said, really cut to the chase and just get to the mechanical unit. But the restoration is progressing without any change to any of the building. And we found some very good matching brick, which is never really found. But if you go and look at the north facade, I think which is very visible from the street, you'll see that it's working out pretty well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from members of the public? Okay, so I will move to business session for members of the committee. We'll move to business session for members of the committee. Does anyone have any thoughts on this application?
I have, again, no issue with this. I think they've done a very thorough, survey of the visibility of what they need to do. And I think they, worked very hard to minimize the impact, the visual impact. You know, I commend them for that, and, I'm fine with this application as it stands.
Okay, Ronnie?
Yes, I love the length of trouble they're going to try and make the, I think, what do you call the speckled facade matching, to mimic the materials and the look of what's around it, even to give it almost a textured appearance. And we've seen St. Bart's come to us for a lot of stuff over the years. They've always done really, really good work. I agree with Barbara, the visibility, I wouldn't even call it a secondary facade, a tertiary facade. They have the unfortunate circumstance of being across from a very deep pops. And, the right basic sidewalk visibility is not present. And, whatever is present from deep within the pops is extremely minimal, in my opinion. They're going to great lengths to do everything they can to keep it contained.
Okay, that sounds like people are generally in favor. Does anyone have any issues with the? Okay, so should we go to the motion? Anyone?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, take it to a vote.
Okay. Cruz, yes. Harris?
Yes.
Hirschberg?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yeah.
Quebec?
Yes.
Milano?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Shapiro?
Yes.
Spangler?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Litsky?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
So, our final application is from 25 West 18th Street. And this is an application to remove 5 facade bays on the first and mezzanine floors. And this work also includes a new automatic revolving entry door, restoring glass to covered windows, replacing storefront windows in kind, and new signage as well.
Good evening. My name is Randy Gerner. I want to thank the board for your time tonight. Yes, what we'd like to do is show you some of the work that we were anticipating developing for the facade of actually the building address that is most well known is 620 Avenue of the Americas. Yuta, maybe you can bring up the presentation if you don't mind. I'm joined by my partner, Yuta Ishii, and our project manager, Laura Reddy. And so the most prominent portion of the facade, as you all know, of course, is the facade that is on the Avenue of the Americas. This originally, the building was designed as the Cooper Siegel Company retail store, and they lasted in the building through approximately 1919. After that, the building has had many different uses. Presently, the building is being used as retail at the bottom of the building, and the upper portions of the building are being used as commercial office space. We are the architects for the interior space for one of the tenants, one of the largest tenants in the building, which is 32 BJ. They are a property services union, perhaps the largest property services union in the United States. And they represent over 175,000 members in the property services industry, specifically here in New York. The space is dedicated to their office space, their funds space, as well as providing dental care and support for many of their union members. They presently occupy a large portion of the upper portion of, of the building. And as a tenant, they had within their lease, the landlord had the option of moving the entrance space from their existing entrance space to a proposed new space. The major facade, as I had mentioned before, is on the Avenue of the Americas side of the building. And the reason we call this an 18th Street entry is because the entry for the Union is located in an area which is used as the service entrance for the building. Presently, the existing entrance for 32 BJ is in this location, and they have a mechanical entrance door as well. And again, this was a service entrance, tertiary portion of the facade, but the landlord is requiring them to move their entranceway to this location now that you see here. And so there is a master plan that has been approved by Landmarks, which our intention is to develop the building in such a way that it's consistent with that, except in order to meet the requirements for the 32 BJ and their membership, members of the union, some of them are infirm, and they will require an entrance door that makes it easier to access the building. As far as the master plan is concerned, or the areas that we're talking about right now, is we're planning on restoring this window and this window to the as indicated in the master plan, and you can see that in this location, we're going to be restoring that window and this window location. Similarly, the master plan calls for a restoration of this window bay as well, and we're doing the same thing, restoring it to meet the intent of the master plan. However, what we've done is we've reversed the window and door location that is published in the master plan. So most of the infill is consistent with the master plan. We're anticipating relocating the existing and approved signage for 32 BJ to this location, which indicates where the entrance will be. We are also restoring the windows in the upper locations, the clear story locations for each of these bays as well. This we're leaving as an existing element on the facade. The important element here for us, of course, is the revolving door that you see here. And this is an automated revolving door. The idea is to match the materials for each or the colorway of the metal in the bays and provide a secondary access means of egress essentially for the new lobby area for 32 BJ. And so, yeah, I guess if you could blow that up. So at issue really is this one bay. The master plan, the original master plan, was calling for an entrance facade, a restoration that is similar to this. And if we go to the next drawing, you can see we've superimposed that original master plan proposal, and we're contrasting it with our proposal for a revolving door that will meet the requirements of and needs of the membership of 32 BJ. We are doing this work as the tenant architect for the building, and the building is requiring that the tenant do this work, even though they are being forced to relocate the entry based on their lease. So I think pretty much that sums up the proposal that we have in front of us.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Barbara?
So so your work doesn't include what is happening with their existing entrance?
No, it doesn't.
So you don't know, we don't know what is going to happen of maybe another tenant or something like that.
I actually think the building is going to use that as and reinstate it as a service entrance for another tenant that's going into the space. If you remember, this was Bed Bath and Beyond that was in here, and they've failed, and so I think that they're going to require that for a service entrance for another tenant, and that's why they're forcing 32 BJ to move their entrance.
And why does an automated revolving door meet their needs rather than a swinging door like with a button, that would open up the leads?
They have an existing automated door presently, and as I had said, some of the members are seeking either medical dental services or infirm and or retirement services, so they wanted to make the entrance as comfortable as possible. There isn't enough room to have a traditional vestibule with sliding doors, and that is the reason we went to the automated revolving door.
And this is ADA compliant?
Yes.
Okay.
Tony?
The revolving door, does that actually protrude away from the facade?
It doesn't pass the property line, but it does protrude past the window line. It's similar to the revolving door that you see in this location here.
In the columns that are projecting out at the main entrance.
They have a
We
plan?
we are removing the two awnings that are presently in place as well, and restoring the transom behind the awnings.
Okay, and if I could just ask about materials, I'm sorry if I missed that, for the proposed doors.
Yes, what we're doing is we're respecting all of the surrounds of the existing bay, but what we're doing is we're carving out the requirement for the existing door, and the materials will match the colors of the existing mullions.
What is the material?
It's a metal material. Most of it's cast metal, but of course the revolving door will be aluminum.
In line with the master plan approval materials?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
And
please.
the building has done quite a bit of restoration over the past years here in the front. So they shared those details with us, and we're gonna match those details that they've been using in these tall windows that they're extended. So we're gonna use the same material, same colors to clearly match this.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have a question from Charles. Okay,
Is
looks
he
like you're,
member?
he's not, but,
So this is for committee.
so, okay.
He's
so
a member of the
member
public.
public, so,
The signage you mentioned has been already approved in the master
well, we
plan.
can just, we can go to.
Looks
Yeah.
like signage has been.
Yeah.
You can't vote, but you can discuss it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and the signage, they mentioned was approved in the master plan, but it looks larger than signage that has not been accepted before. I'm curious about that.
What the existing signage is located over this area that you see here. And what we're doing is that was approved by Landmarks in a previous application, perhaps 8 or 10 years ago. So what we're doing is we're using the same signage and moving it to the new location.
It meets current regulations aside from its having been approved 8 or 10 years ago.
Landmarks didn't have an issue with the signage. And we've been talking to staff level at this point, and then we're anticipating going to a public hearing in the not too distant future.
Can we look at the photo that shows the signage? Yeah. I mean, was there any thought to lift it up to the band above the clerestory? So it doesn't block those clerestory windows?
We could do that.
Are you aware of any similar buildings in the district with similar signage?
Well, actually, currently, all the signage, and we had the same discussion like when we did this signage for the old entrance. All the signage on the building, the Marshall, TJ Maxx that's in there is the same type. That's how we ended up with this white aluminum letters.
And in fact, the signage that we're using is much more moderate and less active than the Marshalls and the TJ Maxx and the signage that Bed Bath and Beyond used. It was very aggressive, and this is very much subdued.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members of the committee before we go to Charles? Looks like David.
I want to move.
Oh, you can speak.
David, you got permission to speak?
Yeah, no, I just was going to motion to the business session, but if we're going to move there, let's do that.
Okay, well, it looks like we have some more comments first.
Would that be okay?
Thanks. We just wanted to check. So there'll still be a sliding door available that can be like opened with a button for someone in a wheelchair or pushing a pram.
Actually, that's our egress door, and
So the answer, I think, is no.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question.
You're asking if there is a swinging
Yeah,
door?
is there?
yes,
or
it's a swinging door. We weren't anticipating making an automatic door though.
But if it's an egress door, you can't enter. It would be locked from the outside, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And that other door wouldn't be so that there isn't like a button to open it from the outside.
That door is actually a service entrance door, and it'll remain a service entrance door as well.
Okay.
And the revolving door is ADA compliant because you don't need to push it, it moves on its own.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, I hate them.
Okay, so I guess we'll now move to members of the public. Charles, I see that you're there. You can speak.
Charles, unmute yourself.
Doesn't look like he's muted.
You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you
Sorry.
now.
Sorry about that. So Could someone please explain how the automatic revolving door is ADA compliant? Because from my experience of being in the city, especially with dealing with buildings with revolving doors, people who are mobility impaired in walkers or wheelchairs, there's always a door next to the revolving door, which is automatic with a button, as one of the other members have pointed out, that a wheelchair could go through. So I'm a bit confused how a wheelchair is going to be able to get into the into that little compartment, or the little compartments of the revolving door, especially as it's moving. And my other question is, at what speed will it be moving at? Because I've been to some buildings where the revolving door is quite fast moving compared to other buildings. So yeah, maybe someone could speak on that. Thank you.
Well, there's no reason that that secondary door couldn't be used for wheelchair access as well. Generally, it was anticipated to be served just as an egress door, but it leaves you in the same interior vestibule. Obviously, we'd prefer not to use that because it's not a weatherproof vestibule. There isn't enough space to create a weatherproof vestibule behind this, and that's why we landed on the revolving door. The speed of the revolving door can be adjusted, and it, as an automatic door, as you know, it's larger than the 6 foot or 6.5 foot door that is a manual door. But there is no reason that the secondary door can't be used as ADA access as well.
Looking on the ADG website, it says that there must be a secondary door. The revolving door is not a compliant door.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I missed was that a question?
No, I'm just looking on the ADA's website, and it says revolving doors or turnstiles shall not be the only means of passage at an accessible entrance or along an accessible route. The accessible gate or door shall be provided adjacent to it.
Yes.
Okay.
So it sounds like you have to provide it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so the revolving door is not an ADA door, as you said.
Well, yeah. Okay. Sounds like we're aligned there. Are there any other questions from members of the public, or shall we go to the business session? Looks like move ahead.
Yeah, I have nothing else.
Okay. So we'll move to business session. This is for members of the committee.
It's not ADA compliant.
Yeah.
Showing.
We can include a like representation that they're saying that it is and make it subject to ADA compliance. I mean, that's not really our jurisdiction here, but presuming that it is ADA compliant, what do people think about the proposal?
I'm not crazy about revolving doors, but if they feel that it's much better for their to serve their membership, it's hard for me to really object. I mean, I would prefer to see swinging doors there. I think it is more fitting for the landmark building. I just I'm not, I just feel it will be a little out of place. Speaking for myself.
Yeah, I mean, there is further down the road already a revolving door there. But the reason for revolving door is that it's more environmentally friendly since there's no vestibule there.
Yeah.
However, when this doesn't meet ADA, which I know is not our building, which someone else is gonna have to come before us because it has to be reconfigured.
Yeah.
with a compliant door.
I mean, they could put a vestibule in, they chose not to. I mean, you could put it inside the building. I mean, I've done that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand that it's, you know, you don't want the swinging doors without having an airlock for environmental reasons, but it could be done. I understand the rationale for not wanting to do it.
So, what I'm seeing here, the proposal is on a landmark building in a landmarked, Ladies Mile area. And what we're looking at is changing this is the existing, we're taking off the awnings, which
Yeah.
we hate awnings, right?
Oh.
And
Gotta
they're
go that far.
substituting, not much different over here, but over here, they're taking away some of this cement or limestone down here, and they're bringing the windows down to the ground. And it seems to me that's the major thing that we're looking at, seeing that the doors are okay, you know, which I'm not an expert on doors, but I'm seeing that they're getting rid of that, they're getting rid of that, they're getting rid of that. And are we okay with these X's to go, to have this, when everything else is gonna look pretty much the same? And, it doesn't make a big deal to me, I'm okay with it.
There is precedence in the building for the windows going down to the bulkhead. And it's certainly a friendlier thing to the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
it seems that we're okay with that part of it. So the only issue is the revolving door?
It appears to be like that.
I mean, what do you
I got
think,
no
Tony?
issue with it.
Tony, what are your thoughts on this? Like symmetry.
I mean, well, yeah, so symmetry is one thing. So regarding some of the other things about bringing the bays down, I do remember that from the master plan. That's why I was asking about materials as well. They're sticking to the master plan materials, the look, the coloring and all of that stuff. So all of that aside, we should also touch on what Barbara mentioned about signage, just because it was brought up, if in case we want to comment on that further. Unfortunately, we've dealt with, when it comes to revolving doors in specific width bays, we are confined sometimes, right? Because they're required to have X amount of width for the revolving door. And then there's a piece left over. Usually it's another operable door. But you can't necessarily have it centered because we're left with two small pieces on each end, but you can't really do much.
Right.
So unfortunately, we've had to really kind of let that go in previous applications because of functionality.
Right.
And again, like Peter's saying, I mean, they'll deal with the codes department if they need to later on, right? So that's a separate issue. It won't be symmetrical in that bay. There are revolving doors in the building already. The removal of the awnings is definitely a huge plus, which that street, it definitely dinges up that street block a little bit, having them come out and be dark. And then as far as signage, the other component that Barbara brought up, I mean, that signage has been there and the gentleman's right? It's been approved before. I don't know why it's hideous. All that signage on the building is hideous. It's such a beautiful building. It's really been a nightmare, but I think we're kind of stuck with it for now until we get a new tenant in place, but moving it up,
I think it would help.
it may help, but then we're also going into, we're installing it, attaching it to the original bandwidth up there as well, which may be
I see what
maybe
you're saying. Yeah.
more of an evil.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah,
where
that's
the
a
sign-
good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Really cuckoo.
Yeah, I just wish it was smaller and
Yeah.
a more attractive font and attractive
Yeah,
color,
we're
but
stuck
you
with
It's not
Yeah.
font color.
Take it
Yeah.
up the branding.
yeah, but I don't really, I don't think that's really in our purview.
Right,
They have,
yeah,
if they have approved it before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that's a
I
good
think they're
point.
doing the best that they can do with the design based on what they're
Yeah.
working with. And the materials and all of that, like I said, are within the master plan that this committee also has talked about before, so.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. So it sounds like subject to any sort of ADA compliance, people are generally in support of this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. You guys always know so much.
Yeah, do we have a motion?
And Peter, and Pete.
Motion to approve?
Okay, I'll take it to a vote.
Booth, yes. Harris?
Yeah.
Hirschberg?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
K-Back? Yep. Bella?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Shapiro?
Yes.
Spandor?
Yes.
Sound like the other Shapiro. Yeah. Stanford?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Witzke?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you very much.
No, thank you
And,
very much. I hope you don't have too late a night ahead of you.
Thank
No,
you.
I,
Have a good night.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, and
Too
so
late.
that's the final application. We wanted to do the training session, but it seems like it might as well push it.
How many people are we missing? Also.
Can't hear, Tony.
So we're
people are we
missing. How many new,
Well.
Sam leaving, he doesn't need any changing. Neil's here. Fiona Zoo. We're missing Zara Harder. We're missing Morris Addis. We're missing
yeah.
David is here. Karen is here.
oh, Karen doesn't.
Malik.
listen to-
We're missing.
Malik's
Sachi.
I think we
Okay.
should table it.
Yeah, I think we should table it, once we have some more of the new members present. But that's something to stay tuned for.
Yeah.
It'll be a training session in which, our, great experienced, members will be leading. Before we just adjourn the meeting, is there any new business?
I just have a question about that. Is it gonna be at a meeting? What's the length of time? Like, can you provide some sort of framework of what we're expecting for this? 'Cause like,
Did you repeat
How
that?
long
It comes about four.
like, what is this training session meant to be?
So the training session is just sort of to go through the landmarks law, sort of stuff you need to know. And just, sort of conceptually, like the
Okay.
purpose of
Sort
everything.
of
But like, do we
guidelines.
expect it to be 3 hours? Do we
No.
expect it to be
No.
15 minutes? Like, what's,
It's only an hour. It's only like an hour.
okay.
Depends how much-
And
That's
we're-
why we decided not to do it tonight, right?
Right, I guess it seems like there's a lot of discussion about it that like then the people who need to attend it don't know about.
Was it?
What it's appearing to me.
It wasn't, it should have been in the agenda.
We used to do it as a separate session.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a better idea or not.
I mean, anything that we can do to be like efficient with our time would be really grateful.
Yeah,
And like, if it is going to be a separate session, I think there needs to be a lot of lead time because we can't.
Well, you'd have to send out like a doodle poll or something
so
like that.
I think for this meeting, we thought that we were only gonna have like 2 applications and we would have, I thought we could have just tacked it on. But then we got 3, so it just went longer than we would have liked.
And I think being a volunteer on this is, just sort of comes with, unfortunately, we've been a lot of long sessions and it's great
Yeah, I
to be
mean-
trained. It's great to be trained and everyone, public member or not, has gone through training. It's
I'm
kind of how-
not opposed to training, but like, I think setting
Yeah.
some expectation of what it would look like would be
Yeah.
appropriate.
Everybody
we're
wants to be so efficient.
Doing like, 3 or more long meetings every month.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Those of us who are on board and it's
Yeah. I
really
think-
a significant amount of time, so.
Throw me my question to you, since you're putting together, and Barbara, since you're putting together materials, do you think there would be some advantage to sending them out in advance so people could like review them and
Yeah, we
maybe
can.
we could
I
skip
mean, if
some of
we're
the.
talking about, a lot of them are talking
Intro
points in general. I think I think we need some discussion on some of the points in general, especially for a lot of new members who haven't gone through a lot of things. But if you think it's a good idea to have people review stuff, of course, if people will look at it, yeah, that's always beneficial, I think.
Yeah, I think ideally, I mean, I would prefer to, if we have a meeting that doesn't have a lot of applications, then sort of tack it on there so that we don't need to all
Fine.
convene at another time.
I just
I
like,
wonder if we could even break it up into two, like if it's a lot of,
No.
like maybe do one portion and then.
No, let's just
like,
do it
if
all
it's not
once.
too long.
If we had one application, that would be perfect.
Yeah, and we can
Because
force
we-
it streamline.
Yeah,
But I think the key is really to get the new members.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
if you started saying, okay, we may have it after X meeting, or maybe the next meeting, there's a high probability that you're not gonna get all the new members. I
Yeah.
think that has to be, the highest priority is to get these guys who
Well-
are doing the presentation.
do you want to send out
And
an
you
email
people-
and ask people's opinion about the
Yeah.
best way to go about this?
We used to have to do it as an offsite, or you didn't even have the benefit of having it after.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Do it
The
in the
past
car.
was always better. Not saying
Yeah.
the past is the right way, but the
No.
past it was always a separate distinct,
I mean, what I would probably suggest is, let's see what the next cycle looks like and how many applications we have. And if it looks light, then we'll message everyone and see like, oh, do you want to tack it on? And hopefully after that, we won't receive more applications. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to do it soon when everyone's available, because I think it
And
would
like,
be.
I was able to get the information because I called Marisa yesterday, but like, it seems like there is some information that we, the new members, don't have that we do need, like access to the Google Drive and like that information to get these things. So
Okay.
I was able to get it yesterday, but just because I called the office.
Yeah,
So I don't know if like there's some sort of brief thing that could be sent out so people could access the information on their own and work out the information,
when you say information, do you mean information about?
like the application. So I was
Yeah, I
assigned-
only,
But the Met application wasn't on the email.
Right.
So I felt like I was left, like that I was missing something.
There were
It
two
turns out that it is available, I just didn't have the login information for the Google Drive. So like maybe some stuff like that could get sent around just so people kind of know, like there are other resources available
Do
to
that,
us.
actually, I think Layla used to do that.
Yeah.
Sent out an
In the-
email.
Just
like,
stick it on there.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay.
In the email, there was a link to the Google Drive.
It was only to one thing
Yeah.
though.
I sent a broken link,
Oh,
so that's
okay.
one problem. The other problem is that at the time the email went out, we didn't yet have the Mets slides anyway, or at least they hadn't been sent forwarded to us.
Okay.
So they're double talking, but ideally, it works how you would want it to work.
and if there's like a higher level Google Drive, because we get the one each month, October, November, but I assume maybe there's some folder
There
above
is,
that.
Got it yesterday.
Okay, yeah, I just sort of log on, I try to find the emails. If we could be shared or sent the link to the higher drive, then I don't need to bug you, Kevin,
Right, yeah.
about getting the right link.
yeah.
Then in theory, you don't even have to like be attaching every single thing, because people could just log into the drive.
Right, they know where to look,
Easy.
yeah.
Which I just didn't even know that we had, so.
I'll
That's what-
check
thank
with, the office and make sure that everyone has access. I thought that everyone should have, but that apparently is not the case.
No,
So,
I mean, I got it quickly,
Yeah.
easily by calling, but it wasn't.
but
like, free.
everyone should have access to that drive. Which is where, so actually, the office puts the content, the files in the drive, and then they usually notify us. So,
Mhm.
if you have access to that, then you'll have access to it before everyone else. So.
And
Okay.
also-
New business?
Yes.
So you'll all be thrilled to hear that on a week from tomorrow, on the 30th of October, there's a free tour of the Garment District at 10:30. If you want to learn the history of how come the Garment Center is where it is today, it's not an accident. And you will learn why it's there, how it's there, and what's the future of the Garment District in New York City. All you have to do is show up 10:30 in front of a giant yellow button. Do you know where the yellow button is? Everyone? John Harris, do you know where the yellow button is? On 7th Avenue
Yeah.
and a needle? That's where we're meeting. Okay. Next Wednesday, the 30th, 10:30. Like to see somebody there. Maybe you'll learn something about the garment industry.
That could work.
I'm glad to attend.
That's what I got.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
that's
Mike.
good. Do more than one. More than one.
I do.
Gotta pay the
Thank you.
rent.
They're free. Free.
No, I gotta go to work.
Oh.
Sorry.